Time management. I'm looking forward to making this video because we hear a lot about time management, and all the videos I watch, everybody talks about how to get more done during the day and planning and to-do lists and all that. And we will certainly talk about that. But in graduate school and probably other places, there's this peculiar thing where you can become too good at time management. And we'll cover that later in this lecture. I think a critical element to time management and just getting stuff done is organization. This is particularly important for folks like myself. Maybe we're ADHD, maybe we're scatterbrained, whatever you want to call it, absent-minded professor, all of the above. When my desk gets really messy, and it does easily, my thoughts also get scrambled with it. So if I take the time, when I have the time, and organize my desk, I suddenly, for that burst of time where it is clean, can get more done and I have more creative thoughts. And it definitely makes me think, I really need to do a better job of keeping my desk clean. But there's more to organization than that. First of all, organizing your thoughts. Keep lists, keep a journal, keep a lab notebook. I use my cell phone and note-taking apps on that. I have the Galaxy Note. And the reason I have that is so I can have that pen, because very often I'll be thinking of something and maybe I'm afraid I'll forget it. And so that's all I can think about. And so I got to break out my phone, write it down, whether that's going to be a to-do that I have to do or an idea or whatever. And as soon as I write that down, I can be at peace and then get on and do whatever else I was doing. So organize your thoughts. The next thing is organizing your research materials. So this is the clean desk. Organize lab supplies. If you do a bunch of research, organize your notes, organize your PDFs. So organize all of this stuff that you might have, and you can find things faster. And just having this stuff organized, you can also remember all of what's there a little bit easier and then access it easier. Organize your results. Definitely use proper data management. This is an entire separate video that we have in the same research methods course. But data management is all about, once you create data, whether that's ideas or measurements or a computer program or a document you've written, that you don't lose it, that you archive it and back it up and log it and use version control so you don't accidentally overwrite things. And there's a whole bunch to that we need to talk about. But however you manage your data, keep that organized. So you know how to go back and find stuff, and you know where to put things in when you have new stuff to put in your data archival. Organize your tasks. So this is things like calendars and to-do lists. And I think with technology today, calendars and to-do lists is much, much easier than it was in the past. In the past, we kept these big written notebooks, and you'd either just leave it on your desk so you wouldn't have it elsewhere. But with cell phones today, I love it, being able to just instantly look at my calendar. I got a new smartwatch, and 2 button clicks, I'm immediately looking at my calendar. And I do that frequently because I'm scatterbrained. I'm missing a meeting or something. But I can also enter things on my cell phone and keep track of, my meetings that I have to have or things that I need to do. So I really do love that, and I use that a lot. And then the last thing is organizing your time. And there's not many common themes between highly successful people, but one common theme that I do see is that they organize their time. And so maybe if they get to work starting at 8 a.m., from 8 to 9, that's completely email. They don't schedule meetings then. They don't do anything else. They probably have time later in the day to read things. And so they organize their calendar into times like that. Whereas if you just fill your entire day with meetings, well, when do you do the email? And if you're constantly getting the emails at random times, people can't get a hold of you reliably or whatever. And the last thing here is absolutely work in downtime into your schedule. Work on some time in your calendar to play and relax. And I'll also address this later when I talk about, can you be too good at time management? Prioritization. This becomes particularly important when you just have a lot on your plate and there's just no possible way that you can get things done. So what do you do in times like this? And I encounter many students with these troubles. And of course, I have these problems on my own too. So what I do when I meet with a student who's got way too much and tells me they just can't get everything done, we make a list of everything that they have to do. And then we order the things on the list in list of priority. And then we go down the list, and at some point on this list, we draw a line together. And that line is where they can confidently and comfortably get everything done that's above the line. And then, well, what do you do with the stuff below the line? Well, the stuff below the line, get to if you can. But, and then this is key, you have to be at peace with not getting to those things. Hopefully they're at the bottom of your list or lower priority, but, and it can be, especially for us perfectionists or people who just are highly ambitious, you have to be at peace not getting to those things below the line. I have gobs and gobs of ideas and crazy things that I would just love to do. I have no time to get to them, and it drives me crazy from time to time, but for the most part, I've come to learn to be at peace with that. Setting smart goals. So this is maybe on your to-do list or calendar, but you're setting your goals for the week or maybe the month. And it's very important that they are what's called SMART goals. And SMART is an acronym, which stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So when you write yourself a to-do or set a goal, make sure these are SMART goals or SMART to-dos. So first, specific. You have to be very clear about what is to be accomplished. Like you shouldn't write a to-do that just says research. Well, what research are you going to do? What type of research do you mean? Do you mean go search the literature? Do you mean go into the lab and run experiments, or what? What is meant? So your goals should be very, very specific. And I have some examples following this of bad goals and then good SMART goals. The next thing is you want your goal to be measurable. How are you going to know if you've completed that or not? For example, maybe your task is to read the literature. Well, what literature? How much are you going to read? How do you know if you're done that? Whereas if you said read 5 papers this week, that's something that's measurable. I can measure if I've read 5 papers. Achievable. Is the goal realistic? Is it feasible to accomplish? I might write down on my to-do list, cure cancer this week. Holy smokes, that would be awesome. Think of how many people that would save, but you know what? I am not a medical researcher. I'm an electromagnetics person. I know nothing about that. There's no way that's going to be achievable for me, even if I really, really want to do it. Is it relevant? Okay, maybe I'm doing my research in antennas, electromagnetic antennas, and I'm going to set a goal to learn how to weave a basket. Is that a research goal? That might be something I do for my relaxation, but it's really not relevant to my research. So your goals that you set for yourself have to be relevant to your research. Time bound. Don't just say you're going to do a task and not put a due date there, because again, you're not going to know if it's completed or not. So always set dates. And if you're doing weekly tasks, well, you don't even really have to write down a date because the due date's the end of the week when you sit down to do your list for the next week. Maybe you're doing monthly goals, maybe a little bit of both. I tend to do a bit of both. What do I want to accomplish this goal or this semester? But certainly weekly. A lot of times what I'll do, something I'll talk a little bit later, but in the morning I'll set aside a few minutes to sort of relax and visualize the day, and I'll come up just in my head some goals for the day, but I try to make them SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So let's go through some examples of what are poor versus good SMART tasks. Read the literature. Is that a good SMART task? No, because it's very vague. Where I could say something, read and summarize 5 journal articles. And even more, I should probably list what topic this is in. 5 journal articles about what? Work on device. Is that a good SMART task or SMART goal? And no, it's not. So something better might be finish CAD design of device and be specific about what the device is. So I finished CAD design of new antenna or something like that. Look for circuit parts. Is that a good SMART task or SMART goal? And no, it's not, because I could look all day or just look for 10 minutes. Either way, I could say I look for circuit parts, but purchase all parts for circuit. And of course, we're assuming here we know what the circuit is. And well, that's measurable. Have I purchased every part that I need? Test device. Is that a good SMART task? No, because test what about the device? And again, I could just sit down for 5 minutes and run a test. It may not be a meaningful one, but I've tested the device, right? Okay, measure series resistance of device. And maybe I might add and ensure the series resistance is greater than 1 mega ohm or something like that. More about planning. And this might be the #1 mistakes that I see graduate students make. And I have a theory about why this is, but this is all about breaking big tasks down into small tasks. I think the brightest students are not challenged in their undergraduate years, and they're used to just being handed a problem. They jump right into it, get it done super well, better than everybody else, and get praised by the teacher, and they end up getting their degree thinking they're super awesome and they could just jump into the biggest task and just get it done. And well, that's their experience. So when they get to graduate school and they finally encounter a problem that truly challenges them, they struggle. And what happens every time is no matter what I say, they jump immediately to the final problem and they get stuck. And so I let that go until I can see that student being very frustrated, because until they're frustrated and desperate, they're not going to listen to me about this. So unfortunately, it's one of those ways I have to I'm not torturing the students, but I have to let them flounder before they'll listen to me or appreciate what I'm saying. And so as soon as that happens, then we sit down together and we break their big problem down into a bunch of little problems. And they always come away with that meeting feeling pretty good. Very often they'll make a little bit of progress and then jump ahead again and get stuck again. And it's almost like the practice of doing this has to come from experience. You have to trip and fall a few times to truly learn this. But another thing, breaking things down into small steps, it seems like it's the final goal is farther away. Like, hey, if I just jump right in, I could get this done and be done next week. Whereas if I have all these little steps, it's farther off. And that's can't be farther from the truth. So always try to break your research down into small tasks where you can measure to make sure that whatever you've done is correct, is working, and you're ready to move on. And if you have a good advisor, they can help you with this, help break down your tasks and set milestones for yourself. So that's critical about planning. And as I mentioned, I think it's the #1 thing that you can do to help your research be successful. So breaking down research, there are what's called objectives. Now, strictly speaking, well, of course, the objectives aren't tasks, but to be an objective, the objectives can't rely on each other. So it might be, if you're working on your car, objective 1 is to give your car a tune-up. Objective 2, change the tires, right? I can do one without the other. Those are objectives. Now, in practice, people do tend to write objectives that depend on each other. So while technically incorrect, I'll throw out a alternative definition of objective. They could be different objectives as long as they're independently meaningful. So I may fail at objective 1, but I could still be successful at objective 2, and I come away with something meaningful. And I think this is much more like what I see when I review proposals of the National Science Foundation or other things. But anyway, at the highest level, you're going to set some objectives. What in the end is it you want to do? The objectives aren't answering how you do that. That will be in your tasks. This is more just what you want to do, and probably also some metrics of, okay, this is what I want to do and how good it should work. And so how are you going to measure that progress? Now, under each objective is a set of tasks, and it's possible that a task could address more than one objective, but to be simple here, let's just pretend we have all our tasks fall under a single objective. we have parallel tasks. Parallel tasks are good because if you get bored with task A, you can put that aside temporarily, move on to task B, or go over to task E and then back to C. And so those of us that are sort of ADHD or scatterbrained, jumping around can help us and help break the boredom. So even though you may only get halfway through task A, and then maybe you go to task C and complete task C, you're not really wasting time because these are parallel tasks. There's also serial tasks. So I wrote these as C1, 2, 3, and 4. And so a serial task is you absolutely can't get to the next task until you've finished the previous one. So when you have serial tasks, the way to get through this is to set yourself frequent milestones. So when you finish a task, you have some nugget that's done. Maybe you've written a computer program, and you're able to tell by testing if that computer program works. Maybe you use it to calculate something where there's already a known answer, and your program gives you that same answer. So you can test yourself to make sure you're on solid ground. Okay, this program definitely works. Now I can go on to the next task. And try to set yourself very frequent milestones, because this is also how you'll measure if you're falling behind schedule, because you'll set a date along with each of these milestones. Maybe each of these 4 stars is a week apart. And so at the end of the first week, I finished the first milestone. That's going good, but I get a little bit stuck on C2, and I'm at week 3 now at this second star, and I know I'm falling behind schedule. Maybe I got to start thinking about how to compress these other 2, or I know that I'm in trouble. Whereas if I was not tracking this, I'd be what would be here, and I'm already a week behind, and then it just escalates, and maybe by the end, before I even realize that I'm running behind, I'm 6 months overdue and I'm in trouble. It's much, much better to catch delays or schedule problems early on, and definitely go talk to your advisor and say, hey, I got a little bit stuck here, I'm a little bit behind, and they can help talk you through this about how to possibly compress future tasks. Maybe there's something that could be skipped if it's a little bit lower priority, or handle it in some way. As I mentioned before, definitely maintain a to-do list and calendar. As you progress in life and you have more and more to do, more meetings to attend, you're going to need this, or you just won't be able to handle it. I just could not manage without a to-do list and calendar. I would not remember everything that I have to do. Every morning and multiple times during the day, I am looking at my to-do list and I'm looking at my calendar to make sure that I'm not missing something. Now, I wish I had a super memory and could just handle all that, but I don't have that super memory. I like to tell people I have a photographic memory. If I don't have a photograph of it, I don't remember it. So I highly recommend this. All right, the overarching rule here that I always tell my students: work as hard as you possibly can, such that you're still having fun and leading a healthy lifestyle. If you're pushing yourself so hard that you're not having fun or you're not taking care of your health, it's not worth it. Now, occasionally, maybe you have a due date, you got to work an extra few nights, but if that starts becoming an extra few weeks, few months, few years, you're in deep trouble. Don't ever let yourself fall into that. I might have pulled an all-nighter or 2 to get a proposal done or something like that, but that's a night or 2. If it starts getting past that, then my work is really impacting my health and my lifestyle, and I have to have the discipline to back off on that. And maybe this is one of those times where I sit down with my to-do list, I prioritize, I work down, I draw a line, and try to get at peace with whatever's below that. So once again, work as hard as you possibly can, such that you are still having fun and leading a healthy lifestyle. Stress management. I have only ever known one graduate student that didn't seem to be very stressed, and maybe he just held it in. But the rest of us feel a lot of stress, and there's a lot of reasons for that. It's maybe peer pressure. You think your peers are doing super awesome. It may be that you're just a super ambitious person and you're not happy unless you're really kicking butt in your research and you're a little bit stuck, so that's stressing you out. Maybe your advisor's giving you a hard time, or maybe your friends or your significant other or whatever could be putting pressure on you. There's a lot of reasons that you may feel stress in graduate school. It's important that darn near everybody feels stress. You're the abnormal one if you don't feel stress. But recognizing this, we need to minimize our stress. And there's a bunch of ways. There's, of course, stress management stuff, and there's usually help on campus to help deal with your stress. But you can also try to deal with your stress before you get the stress. And this is proper planning and staying organized. A well-planned and well-organized person will definitely feel less stress. The other thing I recommend, particularly in graduate school, because it just seems like it's sustained chaos and there's always surprises and equipment breaks and just all kinds of stuff. And you'll have to discover this ratio for yourself. For me, it's about 2 to 1. If I want to work a 40-hour work week, I have to plan 20 hours of work that week. Because if I plan 40 hours, I'll be working 80 hours. If I plan 80 hours, I'm working 160 hours. Are there even 160 hours in a week? There probably is, but I'm near death if I'm working 160 hours per week. The other thing is you have to put this down. As excited as you are, even in the middle of the peak where you're not stressed yet, you're still having a good time, but you've been at it for 8 hours or something, you've got to get up and get away and give your brain time to relax, because you'll end up getting burnout, or just you'll get so tired you won't want to work anymore. Whereas put it down, do sports, go for walks, go watch a movie. There's relaxation techniques. Maybe you hang out with your friends. There's all kinds of things, but you definitely have to be able to put your work down. Now, as I mentioned, I got this new smartwatch, and one of the things that does is remind me that, hey, you've been sitting in your chair for way too long. Get up and walk around. And I think that's really great. And I'm listening to it, and you'll find yourself being more mentally alert. Now, this is something I've always known, but, when I get into my work and, I'm in the heat of it and working, and maybe I'm even getting good results, I'm not even thinking. Like 8 hours could go by and I suddenly realize, wow, I really got to go to the bathroom, or I'm late for whatever. So even when you're into it, you're not stressed and everything's working, take breaks regularly, and that will help you from getting stressed to begin with. Learn to do good enough. This is especially true as you get later in life. A lot of graduates have this mentality that they're working super hard and they just got to get to graduation and then everything's just going to get much better. Now, you do get paid more, that gets better, but you only ever get more tasks put on you in life. So as busy as you are now, you're going to look back on that and think, yeah, I had actually a really easy schedule. And you're just being asked to do more and more as life goes on. And at least in my mind, the only way to get through this and be mentally healthy is just to be comfortable that, yes, I could have done better if I had more time. You do the best you can with the time you have and be at peace knowing you could have done better given more time. But guess what? You didn't have more time. You just did the best you could with the time you had. So let all that emotion go of, oh, I could have done better. I could have drawn this better picture or worded that better. And yes, everybody could have, but you didn't have the time. So do the best with the time you have. That's all you can do. Maintain a to-do list and calendar. You'll notice I talked about this at least 3 times already, and it's that important. I want to say that again. Maintain a to-do list and calendar, and review them both at least every morning. And for me, I look at mine, I don't know, probably a dozen times every day. But the new thing here I want to talk about is this: meditate and plan your day. I call it meditate, whatever it is, just a time, maybe it's 10 minutes that you're not doing your email, you're not playing on your phone, you're not talking with anybody, you're not doing anything, you're just sitting still. And this could be when your alarm clock wakes up, okay, now I'm awake, but I'm going to lie in bed for 10 more minutes, not to sleep, but to visualize your day. Think of everything you have to do. So maybe you look at your to-do list and calendar and visualize your day. When can you get things done? What else can you do? What are the most important things? And just plan out your day mentally that way. And athletes do a similar thing. If you watch an athlete before their competition, you'll see their eyes closed. Maybe they're moving their hands around. They're working through all the moves that they're going to be making. They're visualizing themselves doing it So when it finally comes time to do it, while that's not as good as actual practice, it's a lot better. So, champion athletes use this visualization trick all the time. We can do the same thing and visualize our work for the day. Get stuff done early. This is another trick when you have a lot going on in your schedule. Emergency happens, life happens, and if you're constantly doing things at the last minute, when an emergency happens, there's no way for you to accommodate that. So I don't like to relax first and get my work done second. I will do my work and then have the discipline, like when I am done that, even if it's early in the day, maybe it's 2 hours early, I got 2 more hours to work. If I finished everything, I'm going to go home and relax then. So get your tasks done first, relax second. And it can only happen if you get things done early. As I mentioned, waiting to the last minute, you just can't accommodate emergencies. Building a bit on what we've been talking about, let's discuss specifically if you have a very chaotic, busy schedule. Perhaps you're working on multiple projects. Perhaps you're leading multiple projects. The best way to get through that in my mind is to get all of those projects at least 2 weeks ahead of schedule. Ideally, it's at least a month ahead of schedule. Now, why is that? Because if you have a project that is not ahead of schedule at all and is operating in darn near real time, that is constantly going to be in a state of emergency and constantly your priority. And all the other projects will have to sacrifice for this one project that's operating in near real time. Whereas if you can get everything ahead and maybe some emergency happens on 1 or 2 of your projects, you can steal a little bit of time from the other ones because they're ahead of schedule. And then once the projects that were an emergency get caught back up, you can shift priority to your other projects. And you can constantly be shifting things around, and you'll have a lot more agility to do so if everything is ahead of schedule. If I were operating all my projects in near real time, I would never, ever be able to handle my chaotic, busy schedule because every day there's at least 5 or 6 emergencies that happen, and I need to be able to react to those. I'm going to end this video with this topic. Is it possible to be too good at time management? And as I learned, a very, very meaningful and painful lesson many years ago is yes, it is possible to become too good at time management. So this was something that I had studied, time management. It was all about getting more done in the day. And well, long story short, I'm not going to go through all the little tricks that I had to get things done, but literally every second of every one of my days was productive. And I was accomplishing more than 20 or 30 of my equivalent faculty members. I'm not sure that's an exaggeration either. I was cranking out a lot, and I had every minute of every day where I was productive. Well, fast forward a bit, and I found myself in a situation where I needed to be that productive every second of every day just to keep the normal pace of stuff. And so if an emergency happened, there was zero margin to react to anything. Maybe it's not even an emergency. Maybe it's a new opportunity. Maybe a government customer said, hey, if you write me this proposal, I can get you X amount of money. And I have zero time in my day to invest into that opportunity or react to an emergency. And even little emergencies can quickly become huge emergencies, because if I steal time from this day where I need to be productive every second of every day, it just causes more problems and amplifies. So I go back to this rule. If I want to work a 40-hour work week, I plan 20 hours of work for the week. And there's plenty of emergencies and other things that happen that extend that to at least 40 hours. Depending on what's going on in your life, that ratio may be different for you. For me, it's about 2 to 1. So feel that out. Maybe start with 2 to 1. And if you find yourself not filling your X amount of hours that you want to work, then up that ratio a little bit. I did hear one time, this is not my rule, but I heard if you want to be successful in academia, you subtract your age from 100. And that's how many hours per week you should work. And I personally think that's a minimum. And that's just looking at the successful people. So plan that number of hours or plan half of that, and you'll end up working that number of hours. So please learn from my mistakes. Do not ever become too good at time management. Work in your time for play and relaxation.